Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? This is, there's the microphone button. I knew it was around here somewhere. Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. Time marching on. Marching is the order of the day. We find ourselves still at war. No plan, but still at war in the Persian Gulf. And I guess still fighting with public officials here at home. We're at war here at home and abroad. The war at home is over whether or not to call things war or not. And of course, there's a war on Christmas. There's a war on, there's a war on drugs, war on, we stopped the war on poverty some time ago. Everything is in war terms here domestically, but of course, if you use your military and launch weapons and blow things up in other countries, you have to find another word for it. Otherwise, you have to involve Congress and all this stuff. And if you don't do that, well, then it's not really war. We've had kinetic actions. We've had police actions. We've had aggressive, backwards, upside-down, headstand defensive actions that require us to occupy other countries. Decapitation actions. Police enforcement, law enforcement actions in which we've kidnapped the leaders of other countries, all kinds of great things, but none of those are war unless, of course, you're stepping up to a microphone with a seal and a flag behind you and a dark blue suit and a red tie, at which point you declare things to be war, and then when people ask you about it, you say, no, I didn't say that. It's a confusing time to be alive. Plenty of other things going on, of course. It is also a Wednesday, and that means we're post-election. And it means that Greg Dworkin has a collection of such stories, and we will try and tie them all together. Greg and I already did the whole show in the 10 minutes prior to today's show. We had an extensive conversation about things. So I'm behind on the coffee. My coffee is just staring at me. I'm afraid it'll grow cold during the show. I'll have to reheat it during the breaks. So that's my plan for the day. But we'll also be covering all of the topics of the day. And, look at this, top of my list. For some reason, jumping up to the top of my list, that no real particular reason this needs to be first. But here it is. Pam Bondi's face is staring me in the face, and it's got me unnerved, and it's weird. She, like Kristi Noem, who I guess this is true of at least until the end of the month, has decided to, move on to a military base where, of course, there's plenty of housing and nobody will be put out by her decision to move on base. I don't know if she's also moving on base at the Navy Yard or what houses are left for her. But it's a really growing trend and a growing weird trend, particularly in the Republican administrations. This was much less the case in the Biden administration and before the first Trump administration. Just really wasn't a thing, but for occasionally a few military-related, like the Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense, possibly occasionally. I think there was that was Trump too. Like, didn't Pompeo live on base? It's just not a thing, but word spread through the cabinet that, that's a thing. It wasn't a thing, but that person got away with it. And then, of course, it becomes a competition of who gets what perks. So interesting to see that Pam Bondi has now moved on base, again, allegedly because of threats. What are the threats? I thought she was saying Antifa was coming after her or something like that. But she's saying that there's an increased level of threats because of the war, which, by the way, I'm just going to say this. I don't think this is the case necessarily here, but in the United States, the same way it is in the Persian Gulf. But if you're looking to get away from Iranian attacks in the Persian Gulf area, I would say the military bases are the places not to go, just in terms of safety. But I don't know if she's reading the paper or not. Anyway, we've got a lot to do. Greg is here. I will we'll keep it relatively short, but to change things up a little bit, we've done a lot of Imperial fanfare for the plant-based butter. But we'll go classic movie stuff here. And it sounds military in the beginning. That drum roll, but everyone knows the 20th Century Fox thing, which we're not. And also it's the 21st century, and Fox is biased. There's all sorts of things wrong with this, but nothing wrong with having Greg on. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. That's a great way to introduce the fact that I finally got my Yakasani Magatama with the Grace of Inari. Finally.
Oh,
so that's why you play that, right?
Domo arigato. Yes. Yeah. That's probably it. Although we've been, I forgot to ask him. We had a gaming guest that I meant to ask, and I was like, where did we put that? Where did he write that down? Because there's no way I can remember it. I don't know. He said something about Christy Yamaguchi. Do you know why that happened? No. Honestly.
Let me tell you something. I don't understand, first of all, how you could possibly forget the global war on terror. When you were listing your wars.
Well, mostly because of how bitterly I've been fighting the war on Christmas.
And secondly, because we're not allowed to call it a war, I think we should call this altercation between two sides over in the Strait of Hormuz the Super Bowl.
That we might not be allowed to say.
Because we're allowed to say that, right?
Maybe at this time of year, yes. You can't call it March Madness, but yeah, it's your chance.
It's definitely
now.
March Madness.
Right, but you're not allowed to say that it is.
This is the Super Bowl of March Madnesses.
All right, well, Straits of Hormuz. I can't believe that there are still people who, are like, the Straits of where now? This is our third war there.
Right, so, it's important. And every time we do a show these days, I send David a map of the Saudish Peninsula because it's really helpful to have a visual. Remember that Persian Gulf's on this side, Gulf of Oman's on the other side, Strait of Hormuz is to the north, and that's the Irani choke point. Yemen is to the south, and the Persian Gulf, that's the other checkpoint. So if you want to avoid the Straits of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman, and you want to go to the other side of Saudi Arabia with a pipeline, you're still going to have to get past the Houthis, which aren't the same risk as the Iranians, but it's all March Madness Super Bowl, so, it's not easy.
Yes.
So, therefore, price of oil is going up, and this is all about how the U.S. didn't plan for this war at all. This is from Patrick DeHaan, the gas buddy guy. U.S. diesel just jumped $1.07 since March 1st to $4.81 now, $1.22 higher than a year ago. Diesel powers trucks, farms, construction. Spikes like this ripple through the entire economy. Just a reminder. And now that Iran is threatening to mine the straits, and we don't really have under fire great ways to either escort ships or demine the area under fire, that's a problem. And I got a whole long exposition here from an analyst.
Okay.
And Hamid Reza Azizi.
Nice.
Visiting fellow in Berlin. And he says, there's mounting signs that the war may be moving toward a more dangerous maritime phase.
Yes.
Right? It's not all about air power, it's about water power. Reports that Iran may have begun mining the Strait of Hormuz have fueled growing concern that Tehran is preparing to impose longer-term costs on global energy flow. At the same time, some Iranian analysts are speculating that the next phase could involve the Houthis in order to increase pressure on that second strategic choke point toward the south. The logic is that simultaneous disruption in both Hormuz and the Red Sea would have a much greater impact on global trade and energy markets than pressure on either route alone.
Okay. Well,
so, what's the point of moving all your oil from one side of Saudi Arabia to the other side of Saudi Arabia when that outlet is also under siege? Political signaling from Tehran appears consistent with that possibility. The Strait of Hormuz will either remain a route of peace and prosperity for all or become a place of defeat and suffering, says Iran. Now, this is all Iranian propaganda, but the point is there. Trump warned that any Iranian move to fully stop oil flow through the Strait of Hormuz would trigger a decisive American response, but later reports suggest Iran had begun at least limited mining activity anyway, indicating that Tehran may now believe the costs imposed so far have not been sufficient to alter Washington's calculations. In other words, they're not going to let Trump just say we won and leave. Iranian calculations appear to be shaped by several factors. One is the belief that the U.S. is unlikely to end the war soon, But Trump just said it was over, except it's not over. Another is
Changed his
concerned
mind
that
10 times.
Yeah, well, Taco Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's the thing, the title of my pundit roundup today basically alludes to the fact that when you have a fabulous president, when Baron von Munchausen is the president of the United States,
okay, I gotcha.
You cannot take anything he says at face value.
Right.
Which news reports constantly go, because he's the president and that's our job. No, it isn't. He's lying. He's making it up. He's hallucinating.
Yes.
And put that in context. My God, you can't just repeat what he says.
I thought that was well put yesterday. I think I was using Nicholas Grossman's, I think if I got the name right, who just basically said, look, this is being framed as, even as you're putting two headlines side by side, well, within an hour, the situation changed, or he walked back a claim or a statement. And he's like, this is not a walk back. There was no statement of policy the first time. It was him saying whatever he thought would get him out of the question one, and then the fact that whatever got him out of question two was totally contradictory didn't matter. Right. Neither one was a policy pronouncement or position.
No, his thought policy and planning is how do I get out of this news conference?
Yeah, essentially.
It doesn't go beyond that.
So
anyway, this analysis goes on to say that the more you punish Iran by taking out their missiles, the more they go for mines and other things that are designed to take out the Strait of Hormuz. Yes. So the maritime front is becoming more serious in military terms. According to CENTCOM video, the U.S. targeted a Shahid Soleimani, I love these names, class vessel, along with several Revolutionary Guard Navy missile and torpedo boats. The submarine, Iran's only operational domestically built semi-heavy submarine, was hit. And this comes as Iranian attacks on Gulf neighbors continues, particularly against Qatar and the UAE. While diplomatic channels with some Gulf states remain open, Qatar said communication with Iran is continuing. Doha is still focused on de-escalation. But the economic effects of the maritime escalation are becoming more visible. Oil producers have begun reducing production because they don't have any place to put the oil. Iranian officials continue to signal they don't want a ceasefire under current conditions. Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf, whoever that is, made Tehran's position clear.
Sounds nice.
He said Iran is certainly not pursuing a ceasefire and instead believes it must deliver a decisive blow. So at the operational level, Iranian officials continue to emphasize the effects of earlier strikes at enemy radar and warning systems. The army spokesperson said after degrading a portion of these capabilities, Iranian forces have been able to strike with greater accuracy and effectiveness, and they say they still have like 50% of their missiles left. Now, again, a lot of this is propaganda, but strikes are strikes, including strikes in Israel daily. Ghalibaf also warned that Iran is now operating under the logic of an eye for an eye. You take out our desalination plant, we'll take out your desalination plant. That matters in the desert.
Yeah,
Israeli and American strikes inside Iran continue to hit infrastructure as well. Including a large refinery. Iranian analysts interpret the increasing intensity of attacks as a sign of impatience in Washington and Tel Aviv over the difficulty of achieving strategic objectives. Tel Aviv probably has them. Washington doesn't. At the same time, the regime is tightening its internal security posture. The Lebanon front remains consequential. The Iraq front may be heating up. Oh, this all sounds good. Diplomatically, maneuvering is intensifying on several levels. Russia and China are involved. European concern is becoming more explicit. Overall, Day 11 suggests that the war is moving toward a sharper confrontation over choke points, infrastructure, and endurance. Tehran appears increasingly determined to reject a quick ceasefire. We're not very good at endurance. And so, we run out of stuff, and then we run out of patience. And this is an unpopular war, and I think that's important. So all of this is leading to the election results because you have to understand why it is what it is. And here's an interesting thing. I sent you this article by Greg Sargent from TNR, the New Republic, how Trump's war on Iran is hastening the coming MAGA crack-up. Another Middle East war is exactly what the young voters and voters of color who flocked to Trump in 2024 didn't sign up for.
Yes.
But look at the picture of Trump.
Okay. Oh, this is always fun. Let's see. He's sort of peering.
Well, he's sort of semi-saluting, peering, whatever.
Oh, I thought he was like
saluting.
trying to shield his eyes from the lights and look at something.
Let me draw your attention
to
his hands.
I can't hardly see them. They're microscopic.
And his purple fingers.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Purple,
he's got bruises
like
all over
Mountain's
his body.
Majesty.
This is really weird.
Yes, well, he's falling apart.
Well, again, lending credence to the idea that he probably had a stroke and he's on a bunch of blood thinners.
Mm. Yes, right. And if it wasn't for the purple fingers, you would just say, well, he appears to have had a stroke. He appears to be having one right now when he's speaking to me.
Yeah. So anyway, what Greg Sargent goes on to say, congratulations are in order.
No.
For Donald Trump, its attack on Iran is the most unpopular American war in modern history. The Times compared support for Trump's war with initial support for 9 other wars going back to World War II and found Trump's adventure at the very bottom. The Times' support for it at 41. Other calculations find support in the high 30s. This is incredibly low.
Well,
incredibly low.
He's very low.
Yeah, well.
He's got a low center of gravity, too.
Yes. So I'm going to send you that link from the New York Times, but that's bad. I mean, usually what happens is you have a rally effect. But as Brendan Nyhan pointed out, and I think we mentioned on the show the other day, if Democrats won't rally, then the country generally doesn't rally because they generally take their talking points from their political side.
Right.
And Democrats used to fold right away, like in Iraq 2.0 and Freedom Fries and all that sort of stuff. And they found their spine, and they're not doing that this time. And by the way, DHS is still shut down. They didn't cave. And,
Yes, that's true.
They're not doing what the Republicans expected. As a matter of fact, here's a quote John Bresnahan from Punchbowl listed for Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer on Trump's handling of the war. Quote, he has no earthly clue what he's talking about. Something pops into his head. He says it. The next day something else pops in his head. He says that, even though the two things are totally at odds with each other. He can't articulate a plan or vision because he doesn't have a plan or vision. It's like a second grader running this war. Now, that's all true.
Yes.
Schumer is saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things. People still hate him. I don't fully understand why, other than like he's not young enough.
Yeah, well, that's certainly part of it. I don't know. Of course, at this stage of the game, everybody wants someone who will come to the microphone in the morning and curse Trump's name, in explicit terms.
I think it's more subtle.
I won't
than
even
that,
do
honestly.
it.
Schumer says all the right things, and then
would.
15 minutes later makes a deal. That's what people don't like about him.
Yes, that's the job, of course.
But that's his job, exactly.
Making deals.
His job is to do that.
Yeah, right. There is that, and of course, there's also indication that there is.
I hate you because you're doing your job. I want somebody else in there so I can hate them for doing their job.
There's certainly people who will tell you, all right, get rid of the job. I don't think we need a Senate. We should get rid of it. Oh,
well, we don't have one, so
that's now's your chance to experiment with it, I suppose, theoretically. It's disturbing, it's annoying, and they're not doing that great either. As they're searching around for things to do, they understand the job of I'm not caving on this DHS funding bill, and I'm not going to cave currently on a call for for a supplemental for the war. Which is also
keep bringing
nice.
up war power stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say Congress needs to do their job, and that's all the right stuff. And,
those are
why
good
do you
things.
Hate me exactly?
Well, I guess things like I guess now Democrats in the Senate, I think, are floating. Well, maybe we need to have a extended gas tax holiday to relieve pressure on Americans at the pump. And that's got some bitter division about it too. Lots of activists saying, don't make the one thing that's hanging Trump with MAGA easier for people. This is he tied this.
It's the same with the Affordable Care Act subsidy.
Yeah, I guess so. Right. We care about people.
Let's make them responsible and eat
true.
Their lunch in November.
Yeah, it's coming. So the pain doesn't have to last that long. But sort of an idea of. I understand that you have an eye out for people's bottom line, and we appreciate that. But I think basically people want to say, look, the price of gas is high. It should be high. We should stop burning the goddamn stuff in the first place. And if it all comes from, and by the way, only 20, I know it's a lot of oil and it affects the price of oil. 20% is a significant chunk, but it is only 20% of the oil, and not a lot of the Persian Gulf oil ends up here anyway.
Well,
so I don't know.
it sounds cruel.
Okay.
But Democrats have to get used to the idea of not saying, listen, I understand your pain and I need to find you some relief, and move to, I understand your pain, you'll get relief when you elect me, and not until.
And then they have to deliver the relief. That's one of our other issues, but yes.
Well, that's a story for another day. First
sure.
elect me, and then we'll talk about it. You did that with Trump, do it with me.
All right. I mean, yeah, it certainly has to be part of the balance. And you can't just say, well, we have the power to erase some of the worst effects that Trump is imposing on you. Trump is imposing them. If you want relief, get rid of that guy, or at least his power. And then that's where the relief comes from. And also, by the way,
as soon as you give us the votes, we have plans.
Doesn't even matter. Suppose you pass the thing. I don't know whether Republicans would be on board with it. I think the idea was, although there's no
by the
such thing as
time
a
we get
tax
to vote
cut,
on it, they'll be on board with it.
Yeah, maybe.
Democrats
then the
have to
question
say,
is,
trust me, things are going to be even worse.
Yeah,
that's what you have to tell them.
But then you run into the alleged blockade. We don't know whether Trump really means this or not when he says, I'm not going to sign anything until I get the SAVE Act, which, by the way, is really about men and women's sports somehow. And
well, John Thune already said the SAVE Act is not passing. It is not passing.
Well,
the talking filibuster isn't going to work. The regular filibuster that we have now isn't going to work. This bill is not passing. And MAGA's really mad at him for giving up, and Thune is just trying to protect his own members. That's his job.
Yes. We've been through this before, and people have pressed for the use of the talking filibuster when Democrats were the ones frustrated by the filibuster. But it's an extremely difficult thing to actually make work, and it's very, very hard on the majority. And the Republican majority is less apt to want to do work than the Democratic majority ever was. Right. So
again, you got to play hard. You got to play hardball and hardline with these people.
Sure.
You got to tell them, listen, Jimmy Stewart is dead. I'm sorry, but Mr. Smith goes to Washington ain't happening.
Yeah,
not happening. Doesn't work.
There's certainly.
So Greg Sargent goes on to say, the war, it turns out, is particularly unpopular among some of the voter groups that Trump won over. Young and non-white working-class voters, the ones who gave rise to the oft-proclaimed realignment thesis, and the numbers are striking. This week's Q poll finds that's a Quinnipiac poll, finds that only 40% of voters support the war versus 53% who oppose it. Among voters aged 18 to 34, only 21% support the war, 71% oppose. Among non-whites, 21% support the war. This is without a college degree. 69 who oppose. Young voters say by 58 to 21, Trump has made America leadership in the world weaker. Non-white, non-college voters say the same, 62-23. This is the Trump coalition. He's losing them. I'm reminded of what Sarah Longwell, the never-Trumper ex-Republican pollster who does focus groups, used to say, that 2024 is about double haters.
Yeah.
They hated Harris. They hated Trump. They hated Biden's economy. They voted for Trump because they hated Biden's economy, but they never liked him. And now that he's not delivering more than Biden did, they don't like him even more, and he's losing them. And so there is no realignment.
Okay. Well, good. I hope that
especially true with
Hispanic sticks. Yeah, that seems to be the case that they're telling us in special elections and primaries right now.
Right. And so that's the focus. That's the background behind looking at special elections. Here's one.
If you take
Democrats
a
flip
a
seat in New Hampshire State House. Democratic Bobby Bowdman won today's special election. Bowdman was the Democratic nominee in 2024, lost by 14%. Trump won this district by 9%. Now, it's the New Hampshire State House. I think, if I'm not mistaken, everybody in New Hampshire serves in the state house.
Right, even some
so
Vermonters.
The district is probably as large as like him and his two neighbors.
Yeah, well, it comes down to turnout.
Right. So the New Hampshire result is the third Democratic flip for a legislative seat this year, 2026, after a flip in Texas in January and Arkansas last week.
Flip in Texas.
There's a bunch of Dem flips in 2025, I think like 20 or so. So this is one of the legislative elections on the Bolt Sky. This is coming from my friend Taniel.
All right.
1 week after the Arkansas special, the Democrats flip. Next is Democrats have the opportunities for upsets in Louisiana on Saturday and Florida in a couple of weeks.
All right,
So,
Saturday.
Remember, Louisiana votes on Saturday for reasons nobody understands.
If they
Then
didn't
again, they
vote
have
on
parishes in that county,
Saturdays,
so who knows?
they would have Election Day on a Mardi Gras at some point, and that would not work.
Yeah.
So all Gras, or Mardis rather, I got to get my French right. All Mardis are off limits, I suppose, in Louisiana.
Right. So Chris Murphy says,
Plenty
I
of
was in a
Gras.
2-hour briefing today on the Iran war. All the briefings are closed because Trump can't defend the war in public.
Yeah. All right.
I obviously can't disclose classified information, but you deserve to know it was complete incoherence.
All right. Well, as long as it was complete.
Yeah. So that's important. Oh, look, it was complete. War's over.
Yeah. Very, very
Here's
complete.
what I can share, says Chris Murphy, my senator. Maybe the lead is that the war goals do not involve destroying Iran's nuclear weapons program. This is surprising since Trump says over and over it is. But then, of course, we already know airstrikes can't wipe out nuclear material. They confirm regime change is not on the list, so they're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, your taxpayer money, and get a whole bunch of Americans killed, and a hardline regime will still be in charge.
Yeah, I guess so.
So what are the goals?
I don't know.
Destroy stuff.
Yeah.
But the question that stumped them, what happens when you stop bombing and then they just start producing it again? Well, you bomb them some more.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, that's endless war.
Oh.
That's exactly what MAGA didn't want.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
let me just add to Chris Murphy on the Strait of Hormuz, no plan. I mentioned this right before the break because it's coming up. But, he can't go into more detail, but let me just tell you, they have no plans.
No. Which is also amazing because, I mean, there's a whole military command that does nothing but plan this stuff ordinarily. I don't know whether he may have fired the generals who made the plans, or maybe the generals who knew where the plans were kept. That's possible as well. But, I mean, this is what the military does when we're not bombing things. They plan about what to do if they have to bomb things, and no one knows what happened to that. And I can't imagine that happening.
More election stuff after the break.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. And let's see, we had a little chat over the break. I continue to be fascinated by zooming in on Google Maps. Great tool. Companies turned evil, but great tool, Google Maps. Zooming in on small spots in the Strait of Hormuz and learning the lay of the land to some extent, as much as you can get in 2 dimensions, and the little locations on there. I think we mentioned the other day, and I have my setting on my phone off, so it's safe for me to say that there is an island in the Straits there called Siri, S-I-R-I, and I suppose...
Siri, what's the island in the middle of the strait called?
Exactly. Right. I'd be curious to see what the answer is for that. But there's lots of them. They dot the whole region, and it's interesting when you really zoom in. You can't see it from, I don't know, whatever, the 50,000 foot view, although I guess maybe the view from space makes it a little more difficult. But when you zoom in, you can see not only how narrow that choke point is, but how many islands there are in the way of the approach, depending on which direction you're coming from, to the strait itself. You'll want to look at the possession of those islands, who owns them. To some extent, you can zoom in and you can see that some of even these little tiny fly specks of an island are pretty heavily militarized. There's airstrips on there. It's almost as if Iran knew that this was a strategic choke point and that they needed to fortify it, like world history told them something about the importance of this thing. And they listened. They had plans. They planned ahead, and we did too. But then Donald Trump came in and said everybody who made plans before me did so as a Democrat. So we're throwing it all out. It's all terrible. Obama saw these plans, so we got to get rid of them. And now we're fighting blind, the third, fourth, fifth time in the Persian Gulf, as if we had no experience with the region whatsoever.
Well, Chris Murphy was upset about the briefing, and it was a classified briefing, so we can't really talk about it. But perhaps Trump focusing on protecting Gilligan's Island in the Strait of Hormuz is what's the most upsetting.
Is that one of those? I'm going to zoom in and see.
Again, that's the problem when Baron von Munchausen is doing the planning.
Al Gilligan. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, at any rate, it's quite amazing, and I don't know. I would spend some time on it if I were you. Also, by the way, as it turns out, some of the islands are beautiful vacation spots when there's not a war going on. And, Google Maps gives you the chance. You zoom in on it and click on it, and then it has a little picture icon, and you see pictures people took happily as tourists of, essentially beautiful beaches and clear views. And I wonder what it's like there now. I assume it's off limits, but when things are working well, there's a whole world out there of people going to these tiny places.
Well, we need a picture of Chris Christie in the beach chair, just looking at the boats go by.
Get off the damn beach. Yeah. Leave it for me. All right.
So here's a election result. Boca Raton, yes. Florida mayoral election.
Oh.
Andy Thompson, the Democrat, leads by 6 votes. Andy Thompson, 39.6. Republican Mike Liebelson, 39.6. 6-vote difference.
All right.
Fran Naklas, also a Republican, 20.7. So there were 2 Republicans and a Democrat running. The thing is, I don't think this is runoff stuff. This isn't Georgia. I think this is
Florida.
Take all.
Yeah, Boca Raton, you can't afford to just hang around and do runoffs all the time. The electorate changes too quickly.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. The big one that everybody was watching is Georgia 14. And the interesting there is at the moment it looks like the Democrat is actually leading.
It looks that way. I mean,
there were like
it
50
is,
Republicans running.
Yes.
And the Democrat and
one guy.
Top Republican will go to a runoff. It is Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And the top Republican was endorsed by Trump.
Hooray.
But essentially tied with the Democrat. And so neither gets 50%. It'll go to a runoff. That turns out to be a 17-point improvement for Democrats, 17-point overperformance.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there was a Senate district in Georgia, Democrat overperformance 12.
Oh.
That's in addition to the New Hampshire one
That's
I mentioned,
nice.
which was Democrats plus 13. So it was another round of Democratic overperformances, and that's why all that stuff about what's going on with the war and what we were talking about is important. It shows up at the ballot box.
Yeah. Well, as well it should. And, the Georgia 14 stuff is interesting. It's amazing also that the Republicans couldn't get their act together to back one candidate. Even a Trump-endorsed candidate can't get everybody else to drop out. I don't know if they would have topped 50% just because of the crazy Democratic overperformances going on all over the place.
Right.
But
now, within Georgia 14, within there, Whitfield County has some heavily Hispanic precincts.
all right.
All right, 64% Hispanic precinct. It was a Kamala plus 21 area. The Democrats plus 74.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Another
Nice.
one, Kamala plus 23, Democrats plus 64.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of 5, Trump plus 14. This was Democrats plus 30 last night. Trump 41, GOP only plus 4 last night. Trump 39, GOP plus 13 last night. So of the 5 most Hispanic precincts within Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, Democrats did very well in certain areas, and that's why the Democrat happened to do as well as they did.
Well,
and Michael
right.
Cohen looks at this, not Michael Cohen the fixer, but Michael Cohen
No, of course not.
Opinion writer, looks at this and says, I'm increasingly convinced that the biggest story in American politics over the past year is the epic collapse in support for the GOP from Hispanic voters. We're seeing these gigantic shifts in Hispanic communities across the country. We're seeing it in Texas. We're seeing it in Georgia. We're seeing it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so that's why Republicans are panicking about holding the House. They're not going to hold the House.
No. Well, I'm glad they're panicking about something. I appreciate when they panic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. Do you have another?
Well, I have another story here. This is by Perry Bacon, also in the New Republic. This is kind of interesting. Guess what moderate Democrat voters aren't?
There's so many things I could be guessing here. But I know the answer, so I won't ruin it for you.
Yeah, the answer is they're not moderate.
Yeah, as it turns out.
2 new polls suggest moderate Democrats want higher taxes on the rich and some measure of economic populism. Moderate isn't what it was. This is not your father's moderate.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but
not your father's Oldsmobile. You know what I mean. The center-left group, Third Way, they're not really center, they're center-right. The center-left group, Third Way, held a conference last week. Well, compared to MAGA, they are.
Yeah, I guess.
Where moderate Democratic strategists and politicians blasted progressive ideas in the party's left wing. That's because they're not center-left, dude.
Right.
Third Way and other centrist Democratic groups espouse... I wouldn't mind if you call them centrist. They are not center-left. Third Way and other centrist Democratic groups espouse positions such as opposing Medicare for all and wealth taxes. In Washington, the idea these groups speak for moderates across the country is never questioned. But you know what? They don't really speak for moderates.
No.
Moderate Democratic voters are not centrists clamoring for a return to the Clinton era or rebuking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So progressive groups and politicians can probably push rank-and-file Democratic voters to the left on a wide range of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And center Democratic politicians must adopt more progressive positions to remain viable in the party. I'm basing this analysis in part on a recent poll of some 2,400 prime Democratic voters, those who vote regularly in primaries, conducted in January. Respondents were given 5 choices to describe their ideology: conservative, moderate, moderate to liberal, liberal, and progressive. Now, that would be a tough one. I would have a tough time choosing between moderate to liberal and liberal, because since everybody I know, and in fact factually true, is either to the left of me or the right of me, I am a moderate.
Yeah, I guess. People will say that.
So I would describe myself as moderate to liberal.
Sure.
Only 12% said they identify as moderate, while another 21% call themselves moderate to liberal. And the interesting thing is that even among these two groups, their beliefs are liberal. 70% of moderates said Democrats are too timid in taxing the rich. Fewer than 5% of moderates said Democrats are too aggressive in dealing with corporations.
Okay.
On other issues, from government spending to fighting climate change to LGBTQ rights, the overwhelming majority of moderate respondents said the Democrat positions are right. Correct. About right. Overall, 70% of moderate Democrats think the party's economic policy are about right, compared to about 15% who think the stances are too liberal. So the idea, you have to push the Democrats more moderate or they can't win. Well, look at James Tallarico in Texas. He has a different way of winning, and he is as liberal as you are. You just don't know it.
Okay.
Because he codes moderate.
Yes.
Because he's young and clean-shaven and talks about religion.
Yeah, that does code that way. That's true.
Other polls have similar findings. For example, recent Strength in Numbers Verify polling, that's G. Elliott Morris's shop, shows 74% of moderate Democrats favor the creation of a single-payer health care system, and 67% support increased taxes on households. Moderates.
Wow, that's moderate.
70% of moderate Democrats have favorable views of Bernie Sanders. 20% view him unfavorably, according to data for Progress polling. So these numbers are remarkable when you consider the discourse about the Democratic Party, which basically Perry Bacon is saying is led by people in Washington who really need to get out more.
Yes.
But they feel threatened because they have jobs to promote what it is that they're promoting, and so, you know, you're as annoying as the Anti-Defamation League these days.
Wow.
You have a position. You are paid to have that position. It's got nothing to do with reality. You espouse that position. I get it. but don't claim to speak for everybody.
No, please. Yeah, the ADL not having a great streak lately, but they came up pre-show, but you may have seen them.
ADL is Democratic, coded in theory, but in practice, it's
not
it's
all.
Ron Dermer-like Netanyahu, and if you don't agree with that, you're anti-Semitic. And
Yeah,
nobody
that's
wants to
the
hear
issue.
that anymore.
Right, I know it's getting tiresome. I think the thing that that I spotted this morning and last night was the ADL. It's their job is to come out and label things anti-Semitic, whether they are.
That's what
not.
they get paid to do. Right?
Yeah,
I get that. But like.
And the latest thing was, people are joking that the war in the Persian Gulf is a distraction from the Epstein files, and they're calling it Operation Epic, Epstein Fury and whatever, and that's anti-Semitic.
Epstein ballroom.
Because he's Epstein. I see where you're going with that. I would not go there with that, but that is your job. Is it? What time is it? Anti-Semitism. Oh, all right. Well, I see that's what you're doing, but honestly, is there anything else that might define Jeffrey Epstein more than his ethnicity or his family's religious background?
The other part of it is, just because the Democratic moderate voter isn't the moderate that Third Way wants to present as the definition of moderate.
Right.
That doesn't mean that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the leading candidate to be presidential nomination in 2028, which is how they always write it up. You have to listen to us or you'll wind up with AOC and we'll lose the election again. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh dear. Well,
what are you talking
one, you may
about?
be wrong, and two, that's
I don't
just
even know
not
that she's
what's
running.
happening. Yeah.
And if she did run, I don't know that you're correct. And it's way too early to talk about that. And what are you talking about? You're trying to use scare tactics.
Yeah, and it's not even
to
scary.
make people more conservative than they are. You are absolutely center right, more right than center, and certainly more wrong than right. And so what are you doing? And so I'm glad that Perry Bacon is calling out, even though I take issue with his center-left characterization.
Well, that's crazy, but all right. I don't know why he did that. Maybe it was a typo.
Oh, here's another story, totally, now for something completely
autocorrect did it, yeah.
Preet Bharara, the ex-prosecutor, points out that Pam Bondi is going to have to answer questions in Congress.
No.
Barb McQuaid has a piece here in his vertical in his blog. But the interesting thing is, and I was trying to look this up and I couldn't figure out how come I couldn't find it, and the answer is there's no answer.
Oh.
Why
can't
we get a date as to when Pam Bondi, who was subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee, when is she testifying?
Are you asking me why Pam Bondi
can't get a date? And the answer is because they haven't determined the date yet. The date is to be determined later.
Oh, all right. Well,
I keep looking it up. Yeah, I know Bondi. Why is Bondi in the news? Is she testifying today or something? No, they haven't even decided on a date yet.
Okay.
Or as they like to say in Washington, a date certain.
Yeah. All right. I mean, good. I don't care. I'm not certain I really care when she has her deposition. It'll be interesting.
I want her to testify under oath, and then I want her to be
maybe they can't
when she
serve her with the subpoena because she lives on a military base and they can't.
Well, that's
get
the
to
thing.
Her.
You know, why did she move to a military base? She probably didn't want to get served with a subpoena, and she figured that listen, if I move to a radar installation in the Middle East, it's probably safe.
Sure, right. The threat wasn't Iranian attacks, it was subpoena that she was worried about. And no subpoenas, no service, no process server is willing to go, she's living in a tent on top of a radar dome and gutter. I'm not going there. All right. Well, at any rate, so I guess she gets served with her subpoena. They'll negotiate a date. That's not unusual, but whatever. And we won't get television coverage of it because it's closed door. We'll have to wait for members to come out and run to the cameras and tell us what happened. Unless Lauren Boebert is in there and sneaks photos out, which is possible. But I don't think she hates Pam Bondi the same way she hates Hillary Clinton. I guess it's really just a question of how much she likes Benny Johnson and wants to keep feeding him content.
Yeah.
Okay. So we await her.
Benny Johnson. I thought you said Benny Hill.
Right. Benny Goodman is what I was talking about. That still is rather galling thinking about We covered that. There will be no such controversy in the near future. I assume there'll be I guess someone will come outside with a count of how many times she pled the fifth or something, maybe, or just filibustered question. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean she won't try.
Right. This happens to be the title of the story in the Washington Post. Iran war's oil shock fuels GOP political anxiety. There's not that much in it that you don't already know that we haven't already discussed, but I just think it's interesting that the two large political papers are focusing on GOP anxiety about the midterms.
Oh, well, they love
it's all part of what
anxiety.
seeps in everywhere, and it's quite interesting. You know what else is interesting?
Yes.
Trump still hasn't endorsed John Cornyn. He's still afraid to. He's afraid of losing. So Cornyn wants his backing. So what does he do? Cornyn starts backing, ending the filibuster and passing the Save America Act. Because my rival Ken Paxton did it. Maybe it'll work for me too. I don't have any principles, so let's just go ahead and do that.
That's sad.
The votes still aren't there.
Right. Well,
and as deputy whip, he's on record as decrying any efforts to change the filibuster. He's just a complete hypocrite.
Yeah, I guess so. It's that sort of time of the cycle, I guess. What did I see the other day? Just somebody illustrating the point, the way it works on the Democratic side. One or another Democratic candidate involved in a primary who spent the last couple of weeks saying, no, you got to change the message. Remember, abolish is a bad word and you can't use it. And we need to reform ICE. And then that alongside his new TikTok video saying abolish ICE.
Well, on the one hand,
it works this way. Yeah.
Trump said, I won't do anything, sign anything, or do any business until the Republicans pass the Save America Act, which is what we need for me to keep the Congress and stop being investigated. And so it's vital, and you have to do it because it's all about me.
Yeah.
And Politico writes, Capital Agenda, GOP wants to move past the Save America Act. Senate GOP leaders are trying to tell President Trump it won't be possible to pass the partisan elections legislation. That being the case, Cornyn is free to endorse it because it's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And Republican primary voters in Texas are free to reject Cornyn because everybody knows he's a jerk.
Yeah.
Now, they're going to elect their own jerk, but that's who they want.
Yes. I guess so. I'm thinking Cornyn was saying he wants to just nuke the filibuster entirely. He wasn't doing the talking filibuster.
Whatever version. You need to do to pass the Save America Act. He's like just lining curious. Up with Trump's agenda, in other words, begging for Daddy to endorse him.
Yeah, I don't think Trump is interested necessarily in the talking filibuster option. Doesn't interest him. He just wants to go straight.
He just wants to get it passed. He doesn't really care.
Right. He doesn't care what the effects on the Senate are. He doesn't really remember what the Senate does.
He doesn't understand. How could he care about it when he doesn't understand it?
No. All right. Well,
let me send you the
see
story.
Cornyn doing that. Yeah.
Cornyn backs ending filibuster as he courts Trump endorsement. The president has called on Republicans to pass the Save America Act. Basically, what Trump wants to do is make it so that only Republicans can vote, and that's what the Save America Act is all about.
I mean, I think
Cornyn's all in with it because I'll do anything to preserve my position because, that's who they are.
Because why not? Okay. Yeah. That's pretty gross, honestly. What can I tell you?
So what did he write? Longest supporter of the Senate filibuster, he wrote an op-ed in the New York Post and said, after careful consideration, I support whatever changes the Senate rules may prove necessary to get the Save America Act passed.
Sure you do. All right. But I think you're right. I think he knows that the rest of his colleagues are going nowhere on it, and he may or may not have brought it up at a meeting somewhere. I'm going to start endorsing this thing, but don't worry about it. I mean, I will be stuck voting for it if it happens, but you guys are going to make sure it doesn't happen, right? Okay. Well, I have to do this for now. And they all said, fine, whatever. Do what you need to do, and good luck, and I guess we'll get ready for Paxton.
I really hate these people.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's pretty gross. I'm not that upset about necessarily hearing about a senator changing their mind on abolishing the filibuster.
You're supposed to have some clever reason for changing your mind, not an obvious I'm doing everything I can to get Trump's endorsement reason, which isn't going to work anyway because my opponent is leading me in polls by 10 points.
Well, it's going to be very exciting to see him walking around in gigantic
in
Florsheim,
Bill Cassidy's shoes. Yeah, I get it.
Gigantic Florsheim clown shoes. Yeah. Great. I'm enjoying that. That's a terrific story. I don't know. This is a great insight into the Republican Party today that, grown people
who
were supposed to be
absolutely nothing.
Adults.
And so how can you keep your coalition? People voted for you because they wanted you to help the economy. They didn't vote for you because they want you to save yourself.
Yeah. That's not the point. I mean, that is that'll be his job as he sees it. Yes.
Yeah. I get that, but it's not my job as a voter to endorse it.
Right, that's true. You get the choice. Okay. Well, it was interesting while it lasted. See you later, and get ready for Paxton to win that nomination.
Get ready to spend more time with your family.
Yeah. I guess so. They can all live in your giant shoe, like the old woman. Yeah. All right. Got it.
But the Republicans these days, I think you should all spend more time with Kristi Noem's dog, Cricket. And I'm not suggesting that you meet
just
your maker.
Move to a gravel.
I'm simply saying, go back to your family where you can mourn that which you have lost because you have lost so much.
Kristi's they're still waiting for her to go back home to her family.
Yeah. Well, does she have one?
Yeah, she does. She keeps them in a shoe as well.
With her?
I think she can now. He's fired. When she's out, he's out. But then I don't know now we have to watch and see, can they invent or do they forbid Corey Lewandowski from having any role or official or otherwise in this Shield of the Americas?
Well, as my friend Robert George points out, of course he has a role. He's the undersecretary.
Yeah. Well, now that she's not a secretary, he has to be the under special envoy. Do they have that? I don't think so.
I guess.
That's a very special envoy.
Anyway, that's it for me for today.
Excellent.
I better get off before I get you in trouble.
Yeah, sure. Why, did you have something difficult to pronounce? It sounds like obscenity.
No, just talking about all these shenanigans that
are
implying that people like Lewandowski and Noem and John Cornyn are up to bad things. Pit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying they have zero principles. And
that's certainly true.
That takes them wherever they wind up.
All right. Well, I will carry on from here. That is fine. We're almost to the top of the hour anyway. So thank you for carrying me through. The first hour is the toughest.
That's the end of my 20-minute segment.
Right. That's the way we do it here. Like a 15-minute vote on C-SPAN.
Back 20 years ago when I started doing the show, we agreed to do 20-minute segments. And,
yes.
They just kind of kept going.
Yeah.
Hey, wait. I'm not finished.
Right. Not only was it that, but of course I found if I just turn this thing on here, the first hour of the show is really easy. It's fantastic.
Certain days of the week.
Saves me labor. All right, great. Well, we'll see you then. Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, we
Go away and come back tomorrow.
We have a bite for this. Almost forgot that.
That's perfect for that.
Right, excellent. So that's my instruction to you. We'll see you then.
That's even better than 20th Century Fox.
Yeah. And also my other favorite clip, usually what I play when you're not around.
I like that. Come in like a lion and go out like a wizard, just like the month of March.
Exactly. All right. We'll see you tomorrow. And if anything, if you're searching the social medias and you see something hot, by all means, send it along or save it for tomorrow. One of the things I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll follow up on something we discussed earlier. Did we do on the air the discussion of how, what's his name, Witkoff and Kushner.
Witkoff and
Jared L. Kushner are screwing up the negotiations. I've got...
no, we didn't, but we should. They basically caused a war, so that's worthy of discussion.
All right. Were you looking at... let's see. Did you send me your link on that? Or I've got something from MS Now on that one, and if it's not the same thing,
it's probably the same link.
See it. Probably. All right. I will take a look. I'll tell you what. I'll do you a favor. I'll do your story while you get your coffee. Okay. Thanks, Greg. And I'll give you the teaser. Our break is coming up. We got a couple of minutes to get this in, though. MS Now's headline on the war story of the day: nuclear experts undercut White House claims about Iran reactor at heart of case for war. I know that's a little bit difficult to digest over the radio first thing in the morning, or second thing in the morning, we'll say. But what's happening? The subheader takes another stab at it. The Trump administration sent negotiators, and remember who they are, dummies, sent negotiators without nuclear expertise to lead talks on Iran's enrichment program. Now, its public case for war centers on a facility that experts say cannot do what officials claim. There's a whole story here. It's very intricate and complicated. The top line issue here is you are, of course, negotiating. Well, let's start here. We'll take a further step back. I mean, they didn't do this in the MS Now story, but we're talking about having negotiations with a long-time, what do we say? I mean, I guess it's fair enough to say long-time enemy. I mean, I hate to do that to Iran and the Iranian people, but look, we've been at high tension, if not war, with them for a very long time. We do not see eye to eye on across the board on a number of issues. There's no other way to describe it except that we've been in a state of at least constant tension, right? So you're talking about you need a skilled diplomat to negotiate anything, whether it has anything to do with nuclear issues or not. If it's over, I don't know, whatever, banana imports. I mean, why not that? Why? Because it has nothing whatsoever. They don't export bananas. We don't import any bananas from. Bananas aren't grown there, as far as I know. Maybe they are. We should look that up. No, we shouldn't. We should focus on this. If you're going to have these negotiations, you need professional diplomats. And instead, whether it's with negotiations with Russia, negotiations with Saudi Arabia, negotiations with Iran. It never really developed to that level. Sending Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner makes no sense at all. They're not diplomats. They are business people, and it is indicative of the Donald Trump administration's approach to everything that you would send business people. To him, it's, well, you have to make a deal, right? Yes. So I'll send guys who know how to make deals. Well, I don't know. I mean, like a dentist knows how to close a deal on selling you on a root canal, but that doesn't mean that that's the right person to send. They can make real estate deals. And actually, that doesn't bother Donald Trump. We're a little late on our music, but we'll fix that one in post. But now I've talked about it. Anyway, but you can't just say, well, he can close a real estate deal, so he can close a diplomatic deal. Except that, like I said, it doesn't worry Donald Trump because in his view, everything's a real estate deal. You might think I'm kidding, except you've experienced already the Gaza deal, where they just said, well, we'll solve the Gaza problem by treating it as real estate. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And we were in the middle of starting the beginning of the MS Now, not MSNBC, but MS Now article on what happens when you send dummies who are barely competent to do a real estate deal to do a deal that doesn't have anything to do with real estate. And the answer is they come back with a real estate deal. Well, what happens? That's when you send them to negotiate with, well, the Gaza deal. I guess, remember this, right? They were sent to negotiate, but with whom were they negotiating? The Gazans? No, they didn't speak to any of them. They were talking to the Gazans' hostile neighbor, the Israelis, who were interested in acquiring Gaza. And the deal, well, basically it was a little more akin to, I don't know, what was the name of the, am I thinking of the right names attached to the World War II era deal on dividing up Poland? Was that, I'm trying to think now, there was like a Hitler von Ribbentrop with the names that come to, but was that the deal to stay neutral and out of Poland, or was that the deal to say, screw it, let's invade Poland and divide it in half between us? Or I don't know whether it was in half or not. But anyway, what can I tell you? I'm mixing up the details here, I'm sure. But you get the idea. This was essentially a meeting, a real estate deal to say if we were to somehow acquire the rights to Gaza, how would you want to develop it? I would do this, and I would do this, and I would do this. Yeah, well, that's all well and good. You don't own Gaza. But what if we did? That's the deal I'm looking to make. And so then you say, all right, well, that's quote unquote successful. And a couple of other deals in which they say, Steve Witkoff and maybe Gerard Kushner went along with him on some of these trips, but go to Moscow and let's work out a deal on Ukraine. And I guess Ukraine being what it is and larger than it is and more politically influential than Palestine or Gaza, at least, they were able to withstand the pressure to give in or to be overwhelmed. It's not that the Gazans gave in. The Gazans said, no, we don't want any part of this. Oh, well, no one's listening to you. Well, people were listening to the Ukrainians. So we don't have a deal in place, not for lack of trying on Steve Witkoff's part, for simply splitting Ukraine in half and giving one half to the Russians and the other half to us. Apparently we have no interest in occupying them, but we have an interest in extracting their minerals. So again, that was the deal they wanted. Instead of building luxury resorts with the land we were acquiring with the other bad guys, we're going to have a mining property and extract minerals from it. I don't care what you do with your half. Okay, another great success. Now send him to negotiate. He's such a great negotiator. He's gone twice to negotiate with people and twice has come back with a deal of sorts. Go negotiate with Iran, except this time you're negotiating with Iran and we're not splitting Iran in half and not talking to another third party about what we should be doing about Iran. It was negotiating with Iran. So that's just unfamiliar territory for Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner anyway. But on top of that, there's an actual serious issue at the heart of the disagreement, and that is the nature and scope of Iran's nuclear capabilities. And what I mean here is not nuclear weapons production capabilities necessarily, but nuclear science that has all sorts of applications. It may be that what they're interested in is getting to a bomb, but one of the weird things about science is that there are people in practice in the sciences who can tell you whether one of those things is happening or the other. And they were not included in the negotiations. This, too, by the way, has a long history with Donald Trump, even involving nuclear issues, in specifically including nuclear weapons. You may recall this is one of the things that goes back to the 1980s Donald Trump, when he could still express himself intelligibly, I guess. Intelligibly, not intelligently, intelligibly. They're different. But it was his belief in the late 1980s that President Reagan, you should send me to negotiate the nuclear with Russia, the Soviet Union. I don't know all about necessarily all the things about the missiles and the bombs and that stuff. I know they're bad. I know we want to reduce the number, but it'll take me an hour and a half tops to learn everything I need to know about the nuclear. He really did say that. It would take him an hour and a half to learn all he needs to know about it, and then he would go and negotiate because, in his view, it was, well, you say we have too many missiles, and they say we have too many missiles, so we need to come up with a number of missiles that's lower, what many people are calling lower numbers than the numbers we currently have. And so I'll negotiate that. And, I guess you could go there and say, well, I have 500 of them. How about if I reduce it to 250? And you have 1,000 of them. And if you cut it in half, you'll be at 500. But I'd like us to have closer to parity. What if you cut it to 300? Okay, that's interesting. If all missiles are the same, which they're not, and they're all deployed the same way, and they're not, and they're all positioned similarly, and they're not, and they're all as modern and as effective, and they're not. There's a million nuances to it. But he thought Oh, what do I need? An hour and a half. Well, that was never the case. Similarly, if you go to negotiate about the kind of nuclear laboratories Iran should be allowed to have, you might want, I don't know, a nuclear scientist around to evaluate the positions of the two parties. And they didn't do that. They sent the real estate negotiator, which, even if it wasn't a nuclear issue, even if it was something actually that you could understand with an hour and a half of study, they hadn't done that study. But Trump figured, what's the difference? A deal is a deal, and it's not. All right. What's the real story as written by people who did, in fact, spend at least an hour and a half coming to understand the situation? Those people being Vaughn Hilliard, David Rohde, R-O-H-D-E, not R-H-O-D-E, but R-O-H-D-E, and Ian Sherwood. Here's how they put it. The Trump administration has cited Iran's Tehran research reactor as a central justification for its military strikes. I don't know if that's one we obliterated or not, but that seems to be the central issue right now. But has provided no evidence that the facility, built by the United States, by the way, and used for civilian research for nearly 6 decades. If you're wondering, how did the United States build a nuclear reactor in Tehran? Well, they did it a long time ago, before the Iranian revolution that brought the Ayatollah Khomeini to power in 1979. If you're not familiar with the backstory there, you ought to make yourself familiar with it. Wikipedia will do a fine job. About an hour and a half, you'll learn all there is to know. You get some idea of why it might be that the United States had built a civilian research nuclear facility in Tehran. Anyway, so this facility was being used to develop, it's being used for civilian purposes, according to the Iranians, who we don't believe. But the issue is that there's been no evidence provided that the facility is being used to develop nuclear weapons. That's what everybody's afraid of. Nuclear. They have the nuclear. They have a kind of nuclear reactor, yes. Multiple nuclear scientists and non-proliferation experts told MS Now that the reactor does not have the capacity to serve as an easy conduit to a bomb, as asserted by the administration, right? But everybody knows it's a tried and true formula. If we need to have a war, brief or otherwise, with Iran or justify bombing something, the way to do it is you say, they're X number of time units away from a bomb. We've been doing this since forever. They're 2 weeks away from a bomb, 5 years away from a bomb. They're 2 minutes away from a bomb. They keep doing this over and over again. And then, of course, they say, we obliterated the facility that produces those things. So if you obliterated something that you really thought could produce a bomb, and now you're there to negotiate over the future of something completely different, a different facility, it might strike you as an intelligent person that this must be a different kind of facility, not the one that we were so worried about before. Yeah, but they could have changed it, and now they're 2 minutes away from... Why didn't they do this during any of the 6 decades they've been operating this place? I don't know. But I know this. People don't know anything about Iran, and if you say they're X units away from a bomb and here's where they're building it, you can usually get some portion of Americans to say, all right, we should bomb that thing, so that they don't get one. And that's all there is to know. That's the hour and a half version. It doesn't even take you an hour and a half to get there. All right, now back to what they were reporting. The gap between the administration's numerous claims about Iran and the available evidence has become a focal point of criticism as questions mount over the decision to launch strikes rather than continue negotiations. Even though they were continuing negotiations with dummies who don't know anything about what they're negotiating about. And it may very well be that Jared Kushner said, well, it's not that I don't want to continue negotiations, it's that I have a ski trip with my family that week, and I'm not available for negotiations. And no one else has the expertise to conduct these negotiations but me, and if it means a war, it means a war. What can I tell you? Just 36 hours before the United States opened its military assault, Iran's nuclear negotiators, along with Oman's foreign minister as mediator, presented the U.S. with a 7-page proposal for a potential nuclear deal. According to U.S. negotiator Steve Witkoff, Dr. Steve Witkoff, they call him Dr. Nuclear, and he's very, very smart about the nuclear. He has no experience with it whatsoever. But the American negotiators, Witkoff and Jared Kushner, that's where his money comes from. Why not call him that? It hits different if you spell it with a Q instead of a K, Kushner. Anyway, the American negotiators, Witkoff and Kushner, who, according to a senior Middle East diplomat with knowledge of the talks, chose not to include nuclear technical experts in the negotiations. We don't want any of them in the room for some strange reason. You could hire them, right? What happens if you don't know anything about nuclear, but you're supposed to negotiate a nuclear deal? And the answer is you outsource it. You hire a guy. I got a guy who knows about nuclear, and I'm going to bring him with me. Except they didn't. Well, guess what happened? Witkoff and Kushner balked at Iran's request. What was the request? To continue using 20% enriched uranium at the reactor, a facility for civilian nuclear development that the U.S. first built and provided to Iran in 1967. It's older than I am. So what's happening here? What I think is happening before I continue on with the article is they went in and they said, I did an hour and a half of research. That was what was required. What do you want to do with your nuclear? And the answer was, we want to continue working as we've been working since 1967 with enriched uranium. And alarms go off. Kushner has read enough in the hour and a half. Oh, enriched uranium, that's the bad stuff, because we keep, every time we go to war over somebody's uranium, it's the enriched stuff. I know a couple of things about uranium. Yellow cake and enriched uranium. Those are the things they keep saying are bad, and we have to bomb stuff if you've got it. Is that correct? Don't bother asking that question because it's too late. Had you spoken to, I guess, a nuclear expert, they would have said, well, there's enriched uranium and there's your enriched uranium. You know what I'm saying? How much is it enriched? And okay, I don't know anything about it. But if I'm a dummy like Jared Kushner, I would ask this question. They want to use 20% enriched uranium. I didn't even realize there was percentages of enriched uranium. I assume, what will be bad? What would be bomb stuff? Is that 100% enriched uranium? That's a video game-ish approach to things. When you get to 100, you get to make a bomb, right? So you're making progress. Oh, this is your progress bar. You're at 20%. Can I turn that into 100% and then make a bomb out of it? No, that's not really the way it works. Is 20% anything close to what you would need to make a bomb? I don't know. I don't know, but experts would. And so what it looks like happens here is they had some nuclear experts on the Iranian side, and they said, well, how about if we keep going in a civilian capacity with 20% enriched uranium, because that shouldn't bother anyone, because anyone who knows anything about enriched uranium, not me, knows that X% is where you get into bomb territory, and we're at Y%, or X minus Y%. Surely that would be okay to anyone who knows anything. But you were talking to guys who heard enriched. So they said no. And then what was there to do after that? Well, we're not going to agree to your demands. Well, then we're going to bomb you. Well, then I guess we're getting bombed. That's the negotiations. Where's the hotel in all this? Says Jared. I don't understand what I'm doing here. I got to go skiing. The claim that they were using a research reactor to do good for the Iranian people was a complete and false pretense to hide the fact that they were stockpiling there, a senior Trump administration official told reporters during a briefing on Tuesday, 3 days after the attacks began. Look, you could sell that. People don't know anything. Why didn't you? I don't know. But the Trump administration has yet to provide evidence or intelligence to the public or to Congress demonstrating that Iran intended to use the uranium at the Tehran research reactor for weapons development, or that the facility was being covertly used for stockpiling purposes. In two classified briefings to lawmakers since the attacks, administration officials made no assertion that the reactor was being used for stockpiling purposes for a potential weapon, according to two people familiar with their comments, which is weird because a top administration official who got away without getting their name on the record, even though she gave a briefing to reporters on Tuesday and saying there was stockpiling going on. Do you have any evidence for that? Look, it's the good rich blimp. Well, we can't run with that. The International Atomic Energy Agency had evidence that they were stockpiling there, and they had enough fuel to run TRR, the Tehran Research Reactor, for the next 7 or 8 years without any additional fuel being delivered, Witkoff said on the Mark Levin show. But oddly, no administration officials will say that to members of Congress where it counts. They were stockpiling at the 20% level. Is that bad? I don't know. Witkoff alleged that the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General, Rafael Grossi, who was part of the final rounds of talks just before the military incursion, told Iran that it had stopped burning anything at the reactor and instead claimed that all of the fuel is stockpiled. Witkoff said it was their Perry Mason moment. Aha! Stockpiling. Is that dangerous? What is it? I don't know. But I have trigger words. Just like everything, just like they ran the operation over at Dodgy, which is a continuing and burgeoning story. More and more people cover. I don't know if there's been any new revelations. I think we got the story reported well the first time, relate it to you, and now everybody is saying it. But that, yes, most of the cancellation of grants and the firing of people and the termination of programs that was done in Dodgy over claims that they had too much DEI and too much woke in it really was just a matter of asking, like ChatGPT, is this woke? Yes? If so, terminate. And they were really doing that. Just like that, they were negotiating with Iran. Did you say enriched? Did you say stockpiling? I control F stockpiling, and it came up, so we're going to have a war now. That's really what happened. The IAEA and Grossi did not respond to MS Now's requests for corroboration of Witkoff's statements over the last 4 days. As the IAEA has publicly affirmed, Iran was stockpiling near weapons-grade enriched uranium. Does it have to? I don't know what it has to go to. It's not 20 apparently, but it's something else. They were stockpiling it, says this particular official, while refusing to participate in serious negotiations with the United States. Oh, really? I had no idea you were offering serious negotiations because you kept sending me Steve Witkoff and Gerard Al-Kushner. And I don't know that either of those guys can participate in serious negotiations unless it's about turning the Tehran nuclear reactor into a hotel. I don't know what they are going to add to this. Anyway, that was White House spokesperson Anna Kelly babbling to MS Now that the IAEA had affirmed that there was near weapons stockpiling or something going on. Thankfully, she said, President Trump will never stand back and allow a country that chants death to America to ever obtain a nuclear weapon. And Operation Epic Fury, or Epstein Fury, as people are calling it because they're anti-Semites, is effectively taking out their capabilities of doing so. Even though their capability of doing so was totally obliterated like 6 months ago. No one ever addresses that for some reason. By the way, President Trump will never stand back and allow a country... President Trump can't stand back. Have you ever seen that guy stand? You know, even when he's standing still, he's leaning forward. There's no such thing as standing back for Donald Trump. The center of gravity doesn't allow it. All right. Anyway, in the week since the start of the U.S.-Israeli attacks, it's really interesting to see that coming up in a lot of reporting. These are U.S.-Israeli attacks. It's dangerous to be tied that closely to Israeli anything at this point, but for some reason, I mean, it's perfectly accurate as a descriptor. It's just interesting that you should see the American administration objecting to that, and they're not. Anyway, in the week since the start of the U.S.-Israeli attacks, the IAEA and the White House have issued conflicting statements, can't believe it, as to how close Iran was believed to be toward the production of a nuclear weapon, which I know is our constant obsession. And, sometimes the follow-up questions don't get asked, but, how close was Iran to a nuclear weapon? Okay, IAEA says some number of units. The United States says some lesser number of some smaller unit. Okay, now the question is, might be, your first line question, well, which of these two things is right? And then the other question should be, is the Tehran research reactor with its 20% enriched uranium the place where they're doing this? And that might not be a yes, right? It could be a shell game. They aren't stockpiling or enriching uranium at this TRR, but we know where it is. But we think they are stockpiling or enriching at some other facility elsewhere, and we don't know where it is. So we'll blow up the one we know where it is and say we did it. Well, that's ridiculous. Why would you blow up the one that isn't responsible for enriching uranium and getting towards a bomb? I don't know. You blew something up 6 months ago and said you totally obliterated their capability of producing a bomb, and now you're back saying they're going to produce a bomb. Obviously, you obliterated something else. Isn't that always your tactic then? You don't know where it's really happening, so you blow up something that you do know. Is that a surprise to anyone? Anyway, there we are. In the let's see. So, all right, in this week since the attacks started, conflicting statements about who's doing what and where and how close are they to a nuclear weapon. This is spin. It just isn't true. And the conversation that did take place with Director General Grossi present has been completely taken out of context by Mr. Witkoff, a Persian Gulf diplomat who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive deliberations, said in response to the claim. All right. Next up, confusing and misleading is the headline, the subheader on this next section. Several nuclear experts who spoke to MS Now questioned the extent to which Witkoff and Kushner, who led the nuclear negotiations and described the Iranian position to Trump, the extent to which they understood the technical details of the enrichment programs at the heart of the deliberations. It certainly could be the case, by the way, that they understood it perfectly and Trump was too dumb to grasp it, and they don't want to say that, so they say, we're dumb, but it would be very easy to believe that everybody involved was too dumb to do this. Not even too dumb. I mean, they are, but if you had sent a very intelligent person, they probably would have said, you know what we need is a nuclear expert. And we can ask him, 20%, is that bad? No, if you know off the top of your head, no, that's not going to make a bomb and never will. Fine, let him have it. Or, no, we're going to bomb them anyway, but at least on an informed basis. That would have been helpful. Elena Sokova, the executive director of the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, called the administration's assessment of the Tehran research reactor confusing and misleading and riddled with technical errors. It mixes up different elements of the nuclear program and their potential proliferation capabilities, Sokova said. Research reactors are not capable of doing enrichment of uranium, whether for civil or military purposes. So you might ask, all right, they want to use 20% enriched uranium. Is there any way that they could make that into 40%? I don't even know what number you need to get to, but whatever it is you need to do to get to a bomb or closer to a bomb. Well, can they do that? No, they can't. And in fact, this type of reactor can't make it any more enriched than it already is. And if I'm telling you that 20% enriched uranium will give you cancer if you eat it, but, or you can't sit in the core of the reactor to tan safely or at all. But, can it become more enriched? And is more enriched uranium what they need for a bomb? Yes. Can they do that? No. All right. So should we let them have the 20% that's there? We could, but we got to make sure that they don't start stockpiling more of it, because that might have, that creates some other particular kind of concern. Or you might wink, wink. Well, we only want to work with 20% enriched uranium. Okay, work with. That's fine. Oh, but we also want, bomb level enriched uranium. We want to be able to store it nearby. We're not going to use it. That would be a trigger. No, that's a bad thing. Is it happening? No, it's not. But it would be a bad thing. Witkoff and Kushner did not bring technical experts from the U.S. Oh, that is interesting. That's wiggly. Weasel words. We didn't bring any experts from the U.S. to sit on in our talks in Geneva. Did we bring any from Moscow? I wonder. But that's all according to a senior Middle East diplomat with knowledge of the talks, i.e. someone who was in the room or near enough to know who was in it and who wasn't. And I'll tell you who wasn't. Experts from the U.S. And the White House opted to forego scheduled technical talks for this past Monday in Vienna, where more detailed nuclear details, it really says that, were expected to be addressed. When it comes to nuclear non-proliferation discussions, the details matter. I can't believe it. That's really odd. I would never have guessed it. That's Daryl Kimball, Executive Director of the Arms Control Association, who I guess is in some position to know how complex these things really are. And working out the details requires time and technical expertise, and the administration was not patient enough to apply either to this effort. Witkoff defended his credentials last week to lead the nuclear talks. Oh, I'd like to hear this. I wouldn't tell you I'm an expert in nuclear, but I've learned quite a bit, and I've studied it, and I've read quite a bit about it, and I'm competent to sit at the table and discuss it, and Jared is as well, Witkoff said on the Mark Levin show, and I guess Mark just didn't press him on it. Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp $1 bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. We got one more shot at trying to get through this MS Now article. It is important. Let's get back to the reading and try not to get too sidetracked. Now is the part of this where we see whether they can explain to us, well, what are the answers to some of these burning questions that Steve Witkoff and Jared L. Kushner were not equipped to understand or negotiate about up to this point. And it begins here. A 60-year-old facility. Let's talk a little about the Tehran Research Reactor. The U.S. first built and provided the Tehran Research Reactor to Iran in 1967 as part of the, this is a real thing, Atoms for Peace program that began under President Dwight Eisenhower. The initiative aimed to expand civilian nuclear capabilities for electricity, medicine, and other domestic purposes. The reactor requires 20% enriched fuel and a relatively minimally enriched amount compared with the material required for the production of a nuclear weapon. Under the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement, known as the JCPOA, that would be the Obama-era agreement that was in place and apparently working fine before it was destroyed, torn up and abandoned by the Trump administration. But under that agreement, the reactor would have access to no more than 5 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium at a time, supplied from outside the country and monitored by inspectors. Okay, so for civilian purposes, they wanted to teach people at the university how to do the nuclear engineering for civilian electricity production and medicine and other domestic purposes, right? Okay, fine. This was the American idea. Let's do it. An atoms for peace idea. Give it to Iran. No, we didn't foresee the Iranian revolution, but that was okay because these were for peace, you see. Everything would be okay, I guess, under certain understanding. Then we ran out of understanding. The reactor has not come under IAEA scrutiny for suspected nuclear development in more than 25 years, according to Katarina Simonen, a board member of the, ready for this one, the Pugwash Conferences of Science and World Affairs, and an adjunct professor at the Finnish National Defense University. There are two I's next to one another in Katarina, and I don't know if that suggested Finnish to you, but it suggested something. Anyway, this dispute is apparently over the 20% enrichment deal, right? What's the story with that? At the heart of the Trump administration's case is the 20% enriched uranium that Iran uses at the Tehran research reactor. In the 7-page proposal presented at negotiations in Geneva last week, the Iranians sought to maintain a certain level of enrichment at 20% for purposes of producing radioisotopes and medicine, standard civilian applications at the facility. In other words, the very reason that the United States built and gifted this reactor to them in the first place. Witkoff argued that the 20% enrichment level gave Iran 5 times the level that the JCPOA would have allowed, referring to the Obama-era agreement's cap at 3.67% for Iran's broader enrichment activities. Is that claim correct? I don't know. Is it interesting to note that, if the number indicates progress towards weapons-grade uranium, clearly you would want a lower number. They wanted to have 20%, but the Obama-era agreement capped them at 3.67%. Why did you tear it up? If 20% is safe, because it could be used for civilian application only and not weapons grade, but they for some reason agreed to 3.67%, why would you abandon that deal? I don't know. Don't ask me that question. We're having a war. Okay. But anyway, Witkoff argued that a 20% enrichment level gave them 5 times the level the JCPOA would have allowed. But the JCPOA separately provided for 20% enriched fuel to be supplied from outside Iran, specifically to meet the reactor's needs, capped at 5 kilograms at any given time and subject to the international monitoring scheme by inspectors. In other words, Witkoff either lied about the terms of the JCPOA or never understood them or know them in the first place, and yet was sent to negotiate this thing and babble about it to the press. He says that's 5 times what JCPOA would have allowed. Then somebody read the JCPOA and said, actually, no. The TRR reactor requires 20% fuel. That's how the reactor is designed, said Kimball of the Arms Control Association. Is the TRR all a cover for nuclear weapons? One can make that claim, but at the same time, Iran was in the talks describing what they think their future nuclear energy needs might be and why. At some point in the future, they want to have the option to enrich uranium. Administration officials argued this week that the Iranians had effectively sought to convert the reactor from a civilian nuclear facility into a cover for stockpiling industrial-grade material that could eventually be further enriched to weapons grade. It's a bit of a stretch, don't you think? Uranium enriched to 20% is roughly 90% of the way to weapons-grade material. There's your answer, anyway. And Trump administration officials explicitly contend that Iran would be 3 or 4 weeks away from achieving that threshold. And it might be worth asking an expert here, how do you further enrich 20% uranium to get the last 10% of the way, if that's a real thing, to weapons-grade uranium, and how long does that take? And if the answer there is it takes years, well, then stop saying 3 or 4 weeks away. Or if it just takes 3 or 4 weeks, Okay, that would be how long it would take to do it. Now, are they doing it? Can they do it? Is another question. But if they could, it would take 3 or 4 weeks is not the same as they're 3 weeks away from a bomb. But the administration has not provided evidence of its assertion that Iran intended to use the 20% fuel for weapons production, nor that Iran had amassed enough material that could potentially be further enriched to power a single small weapon. For Iran to make a bomb, the uranium would need to be enriched to a higher level. Last year's strikes destroyed nearly all of Iran's centrifuges, and there's no evidence that enrichment has resumed. And I know nothing about the science of it, but I do know that they keep pointing to the centrifuges as being essential to the enrichment. So I'll take their word for it. And the fact that they've destroyed most or all of their centrifuges means, well, maybe that past estimate of 3 or 4 weeks probably will now take longer, given that they just have fewer machines that were necessary to do the job. An active operating reactor cannot be used as storage. That's the other claim. Well, they might not be enriching anything, but they're storing too much. They were limited to 5 kilograms, and they're bringing in more. Can they do that? Well, no, apparently not really. According to Klaus Montanen, a retired nuclear physicist and adjunct professor at the University of Helsinki, back to Finland, and board member of the International Network of Engineers and Scientists for Global Responsibility. I am not aware of this ever having happened. As an extension of the administration's argument for further destroying any would-be Iranian nuclear operations, Witkoff warned in a Fox News interview this week that Iran controlled 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium at the facility, a level that would bring Iran roughly 1 week away from being able to have weapons-grade material. It's interesting that 20% is just minutes ago sold as being 90% of the way there. But they also have almost 500 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium and still don't have a bomb. I don't think anybody knows what they're talking about in this. I mean, somebody does, but certainly not Witkoff and Kushner, and definitely not me either. But then if they asked me to do the negotiations, I'd say, you got the wrong guy. You ask Kushner and Witkoff to do these negotiations. I mean, maybe they're not in a position to say you got the wrong guy, but they also just aren't the kind of people who say you got the wrong guy. They just figure they're the right guys for everything. So that's an interesting conundrum. Well, 20% is 90% of the way there. And they have 460 kilograms of 60%, but they're also still a week away. I don't know how that would be. Anyway, during negotiations, the Iranians told Witkoff and Kushner that they would turn over that uranium as part of a new nuclear agreement with the U.S., according to the Persian Gulf diplomat who spoke with MS Now. That sounds good, right? The Iranians also told Witkoff that the country enriched the uranium after President Donald Trump withdrew from the JCPOA brokered by the Obama administration. They had a deal that capped their enrichment. The U.S. said, never mind, screw that deal. We're not going to honor it, and I guess you still have to for some reason. And I don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't go and enrich this uranium after that, but they said, didn't matter, we were on a break, to use the Friends terminology here. The senior Trump administration official acknowledged on Tuesday that Iran had, in fact, talked about turning over material to us as part of the talks, which is remarkable, which ended abruptly when the U.S. launched military strikes roughly 36 hours after Witkoff and Kushner left the third rounds of talks in Geneva. On Wednesday, Grossi, the head of the IAEA, reiterated that his organization, has no evidence of Iran building a nuclear bomb. In a CNN International interview last week, Grossi said that Iran, prior to the airstrikes, was not days or weeks away from building a bomb. He said that there was an unjustified accumulation of almost military-grade material, but added that the agency never had information indicating that there was a structured, systematic program to build and construct a nuclear weapon. I don't know if that's necessarily reassuring, but okay. On Tuesday, U.S. officials pushed back on that assessment, telling reporters that Grossi hadn't been on the premises in Iran since Operation Midnight Hammer, the last time we bombed them and totally obliterated everything. They asserted that Iran could have easily had a World War II type weapon, despite the obliteration, and that Grossi directly told the Trump administration that the IAEA had intelligence that Iran had recently tested casements and detonators. Well, plenty of time for congressional authorization is the next section. Representative Bill Foster, Democrat of Illinois, the sole physicist in Congress, has called for answers from the administration about existing Iranian stockpiles and disputed the administration's argument that potential accumulation of 20% enriched uranium would require immediate military action. If they're talking about inventories of 20% enriched uranium, the timeline to convert that into higher enriched uranium and into a metal and then into a weapon gives you plenty of time to go to the United States Congress and say that the nuclear talks have broken down and to request military action, and that wasn't done, said Foster. Witkoff and Kushner have yet to appear in classified briefings with lawmakers, but last week administration officials, Secretaries Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane did not discuss the Tehran research reactor or other civil nuclear facilities and made no assertion that they were being used to stockpile uranium for a potential nuclear weapon, according to two people familiar with the administration officials' comments in two of the briefings provided to lawmakers since the attack on Iran. Next up, inspections cut off by prior strikes. Iran cut off the IAEA's oversight access to the reactor last summer after the U.S. and Israel bombed three of its enrichment facilities, strikes that also took place while Witkoff was actively negotiating with Iran. Iran's stockpile of 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium is believed to be buried underground in tunnels beneath the three sites targeted in those strikes. It's worth noting here. Anytime Steve Witkoff shows up, apparently that's a signal to Iran, we're going to get bombed as soon as he leaves. One of the most effective ways to ensure that Iran or any other country does not divert nuclear materials from an energy program towards a weapons program is through the inspections that the IAEA carries out in many countries around the world, said Alicia Sanders-Zachary, head of policy of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Israeli and U.S. military strikes on Iran stopped these international inspections. The only successful non-proliferation path forward lies in negotiations, not military action. Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi, who led Iran's negotiating team, criticized Witkoff and Al-Kushner for leaving the negotiating table. When complex nuclear negotiations are treated like a real estate transaction, what? And when big lies cloud realities, unrealistic expectations can never be met. Araghchi wrote last week. The outcome? Bombing the negotiation table out of spite. Wow. So there you go. Interesting that they finally get around to pointing that out. Again, you can't approach this as a real estate negotiation, even though you are thinking about bombing certain pieces of real estate. All right. Time to move on and cram in a few other measures before we close out for the day. Let's see. Well, we'll save that. The latest, the Epstein stuff, is relatively short read. Perhaps we can read a little bit about this. But I think Greg maybe might want to discuss this a little bit too. We'll hang on to that one more day. Let me add a couple of other items to the discussion list. I don't know if anybody has written this up yet, but maybe I can take a look in Google News here and see if anybody has committed this to article format. Yes, they have. And who's to read? Well, golly, I don't know. But what I was looking at yesterday was maybe they've written on it. Roger Parloff from Lawfare had posted on Blue Sky yesterday, prior to writing about it or having anybody else write it up, the news of that the DC Bar Association. And you may recall that some months ago, Pam Bondi, who of course just moved on to the military base, as Attorney General. Pam Bondi's brother at one point was running for the presidency of the D.C. bar. He got trounced, thankfully, but that would have been useful to her, I'm sure, in what put her in our news roundup the other day, which was her proclamation that the DOJ was no longer essentially going to allow state bar associations to entertain disciplinary actions against DOJ lawyers, or probably other lawyers that they liked. In any case, that they weren't qualified to do so, and that all disciplinary action had to come down through the DOJ, which would, of course, mean no disciplinary action would be coming down. But in addition to all of this, the D.C. bar on its own has charged Ed Martin with some, I guess, ethical violations and that may lead to his disbarment. And the way Roger writes it here, the D.C. bar charges against Ed Martin are very Ed Martin-y. I'm not sure what that meant. Like, are they badly drawn or no? They're drafted correctly. Ed Martin's behavior surrounding the filing of the charges is what's very Ed Martin-y, I think. After the D.C. bar started its inquiry, Martin wrote to Chief Judge of the D.C. Court of Appeals 3 times, it is claimed here, ex parte, twice after being warned not to, and demanded that the D.C. bar counsel themselves be suspended, which triggered additional charges against him. Now, Roger corrects himself in the next one here that only the first letter to the chief judge was in fact ex parte, but she told him the first time not to contact her further by letter. Ex parte, of course, meaning without notice to opposing counsel. So Ed was trying to fix this thing by talking to the judge and saying, is there something that I have in my hand that I could put, if it was in your hand, you would be looking at what's in your hand and you would say, what's in this other hand? Is this complaint against me? What is this? I don't know what this is. Go away. Well, it didn't work. And she said, cut it out. And guess what? He didn't cut it out. So let's see. Do we have anything from Lawfare on this one? Let's have a look. If I just put that in, is this the current one? No. Well, I should go over to Lawfare, though, perhaps, and see what's on their front page and see if they've given any write-up. Not yet. I guess they're still digesting what has gone on with Ed Martin. But we can back up instead and look at the news and take somebody else's report on this subject and see if they digest it any differently. There's the CNN article on it. We'll take theirs. Caitlin Polance wrote this up. Ed Martin, outspoken Justice Department lawyer, that's one way of putting it, is formally accused of ethical violations. Ed Martin, described the same way as it was in the headline, facing disciplinary proceedings in Washington, D.C. for a letter he sent to Georgetown Law. Here's how the whole thing started. You remember this thing? He sent the letter to Georgetown Law School about its diversity programs. Ooh, diversity. And, of course, so this was announced by the district's, D.C.'s, professional conduct investigator on Tuesday. Martin is formally accused of violating his ethical codes as an attorney for telling Georgetown Law's dean last year that his Justice Department office would not hire students who graduated from Georgetown Law because of the school's DEI programs, according to the filing from Hamilton Fox, the disciplinary counsel for D.C., who acts as a quasi-prosecutor on attorney discipline matters. Unlike unsolicited complaints, Fox's formal disciplinary complaint kicks off a professional conduct proceeding for Martin, in which he will need to respond and could be sanctioned or ultimately lose his law license. Fox's announcement on Tuesday marks the first major bar discipline proceeding against a high-profile administration official or attorney supporting President Donald Trump during Trump's second term. Several Trump lawyers faced disciplinary proceedings after the efforts to overturn Biden's election victory in 2020, including Rudy Giuliani, who lost his law license. Acting in his official capacity and speaking on behalf of the government, he used coercion to punish or suppress a disfavored viewpoint, the teaching and promotion of DEI, Fox wrote in the complaint. He demanded, and we're now talking about Ed Martin, not Giuliani, that Georgetown Law relinquish its free speech and religious rights in order to continue to obtain a benefit, which wasn't even really that much of a benefit to them, employment opportunities for its students. Martin was removed from the top prosecutor job in D.C. after senators made clear he would not be confirmed to that role, but has remained at the Justice Department in several other dumber, more stupid and idiotic sounding roles, including as pardon attorney, which is terrible. Mr. Martin knew or should have known that as a government official, his conduct violated the First and Fifth Amendments to the Constitution of the United States, Fox wrote. Martin is being represented by a Justice Department attorney, a source told CNN. A spokesperson for DOJ attacked Fox's complaint. The D.C. bar's attempt to target and punish those serving President Trump while refusing to investigate or act against actual ethical violations that were committed by Biden and Obama administration attorneys is a clear indication of this partisan organization's agenda, DOJ said. The D.C. Bar Association is the partisan organization here. Martin has sent a letter to Georgetown Law, or had sent it, while serving temporarily as U.S. Attorney for D.C., a prominent Justice Department position, and told the school his federal prosecutor's office wouldn't hire Georgetown Law School students, not the dumb pardon attorney office, but the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. That was a big deal. It came at a time when the Trump administration was beginning to crack down on universities for their DEI efforts. In his letter, Martin claimed a whistleblower told him that the school was teaching and promoting DEI, which you can usually find by looking at their website. Didn't need a whistleblower. Martin also violated attorney ethics rules by contacting judges of the D.C. court directly, Fox alleged, rather than going through official channels once he was informed that he was under investigation for his professional conduct. He went to try to do a fixer thing and got caught. It wasn't much catching to do. He walked right into it. The D.C. Court of Appeals ultimately signs off on attorney discipline findings. Early last year, Fox's office had formally asked Martin to respond to a complaint it received by a retired judge regarding the Georgetown letter. Martin instead wrote to the judges on the D.C. court complaining about Fox. In that letter, he stated that he would not be responding to the disciplinary counsel's inquiry, complained about the disciplinary counsel's uneven behavior, and requested a face-to-face meeting with all of you to discuss this matter to find a way forward, Fox wrote, and I'll be bringing a kava bag. He copied the White House counsel for informational purposes because of the importance of getting this issue addressed, Fox said. The top judge on the D.C. courts told Martin the court wouldn't meet with him about the disciplinary matter and he would need to follow procedure. With Fox's complaint, there will now be several steps ahead of bar discipline authorities looking at Martin's action. And Fox didn't specify how Martin should be reprimanded or punished if the discipline boards in the court ultimately determined he did violate his ethics codes. The ethical code. Spokespeople for the Justice Department didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. In recent days, Pam Bondi announced that her office would have a more powerful role, or at least she purports that they will, in reviewing attorney discipline complaints against Justice Department attorneys. What a coincidence. Potentially setting up an approach that could keep the department at odds with the bar on behalf of DOJ attorneys facing their own individual disciplinary proceedings. It's almost as if she knew it was coming, which of course they did because they wrote a letter to them saying this is coming. And they decided to proceed even more unethically from that point forward. What an interesting turn of events. All right, let's see. I guess I'll close things out with one more item that we need to add to our consideration of the lack of planning and lack of understanding of the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, there was a moment during which the United States somehow, I guess it was the Department of Energy for some reason, which really doesn't deal with this stuff, but everybody in the Trump administration, they think they're all about oil at the Department of Energy. So they announced, hey, guess what? We're so super powerful and awesome that the United States Navy has successfully escorted I don't know, it was a container ship of some kind or an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. We did it, everybody. We're capable of doing this consistently and safely. And so I guess a cheer went up. The price of oil started to come down. The stock market started reacting. And then at some point they were forced to say, no, actually we haven't done that. I don't know what you're talking about. So, no, nobody has escorted any ships through the Strait of Hormuz at this point. It would take an enormous effort to be able to do that. And no indication that they're willing to make an enormous effort so far to do it. But that's the story. It was announced and then, unannounced. But I do have a Reuters report here. U.S. Navy tells shipping industry Hormuz escorts are not possible for now, Jonathan Saul reports. And maybe we'll get some flavor for that before closing things out for the day. The U.S. Navy has refused near daily requests from the shipping industry for military escorts through the Strait of Hormuz since the start of the war, saying the risk of attacks is too high for now. That's the Navy. We might get attacked. Yeah, you might. That's what being in a Navy is all about. The Navy's assessments spell continued disruption for Middle East oil exports and reflect a divergence from President Trump's statements that the U.S. is prepared to provide naval escorts whenever needed to restart regular shipments along the key waterway. Well, I guess that's not actually true, and you ought to know about that. Shipping along the narrow strait has all but halted, of course, since the start of the U.S.-Israeli war. There it is again, on Iran, more than a week ago, preventing exports of around a fifth of the world's oil supply and sending global oil prices surging to highs not seen since 2022. It just, not happening. Not that stopping Donald Trump from doing it, of course. The next section down here, President promises naval escorts. Trump has said repeatedly in recent days that the U.S. is prepared. It isn't. To escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz when necessary. And, of course, yesterday's news was also filled with reports that now multiple ships, though they were apparently at first container vessels and not necessarily tanker vessels, had been struck by projectiles, unidentified projectiles, while trying to traverse the straits. Whether that was supposed to be under American protection or not, I do not know. No one knows what the projectiles are. Presumably, I don't know, a pair of missized Florsheim shoes thrown from the shoreline could have been it. But I don't know. The president continues to go on record promising this thing, which the Navy says no can do. And it's no surprise that we're talking past each other and that there's no plan. Even a communications plan is beyond these guys at this point.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Lots more from all over the map to share with you tomorrow and Friday, but for now, Justice Putnam will share his view of things from the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Next up here on Netroots Radio, top of the list, Alina Habba is on the list today. Alina Habba is mean and stupid, so of course MAGA will go to the mats for her. We'll hear about that next.